swipe their card and.
Good afternoon. I would like to call our Moore County Board of Education regular business meeting to order, Monday, May the 9th. Is there a motion to enter in closed session?
Madam Chair, I move the board enter closed session to prevent the disclosure of confidential information pursuant to General Statute 143-318.11A1 and A6, General Statute 115C-319, General Statute 115C-402, and 20 U.S.C. 1232G, and to consult with the board attorney and preserve the attorney-client privilege pursuant to General Statute 143-318.11A3, including a discussion of Williams and Sanders versus the Moore County Board of Education, 21 CVS 1681.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 6-0. We will recess to closed session and will return at 5:30.
How are we doing this?
will call our meeting back to order. Is there a motion to approve our agenda?
So moved.
Second.
All in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Is there any opposing? Motion carries 7-0. At this time, we will have Mr. Caleb Milton, a ninth grade student at Union Pines High School, to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance. If everybody would stand, please.
Hello, my name is Caleb Milton. I'm a student at Union Pines. Please stand for the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And next, we will have our inspiration this evening by Miss Eve Reinhardt, 11th grade student at Union Pines High School.
Hi, I'm Eva Reinhardt, a junior at Union Pines High School. For today's inspiration, I would like to share a quote from my favorite book, Becoming, by Michelle Obama. Confidence, I learned then, sometimes needs to be called from within. I've repeated the same words to myself so many times now, through many climbs. Am I good enough? Yes, I am. As I get older, I find myself remembering these words to help me through trials I face in not only my academic life, but in my personal life as well. Thank you for letting me share this inspiration with you today.
Thank you. Dr. Locklear, it would be great if you would have her to email us her inspiration so that it didn't come through real clear. So if you could ask her just to email that to the board members, that would be great.
Mr. Batchelor will take care of that.
Okay,
Yes,
thank you
ma'am.
so much. At this time, we will have a moment of silence by Vice Chair Libby Carter.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
I'm sorry. Can somebody turn our mics up? Board members, get them right up to you so that everybody can hear what we're saying. Is that better? All right, thank you. I was the problem. I didn't have it up close enough. I'm sorry.
Thank you. I would invite you to join with me in a moment of silence. It's been a sad week in the Moore County schools. We lost one of our own. And to the family at Union Pines, the children who are suffering at the loss of a friend, I encourage you to keep them all in your thoughts and prayers, to think of the family who will not see their student graduate in a few weeks. Please join me. Thank you.
At this time, our recognitions this evening will come from Board Member Robert Levy. Thank you. Vice Chair. Excuse me.
Sure.
I'm in my space first.
Lori Johnson, can you hear me?
There you go.
Lori Johnson, please join Chair Thompson and Vice Chair Carter in the front. Lori Johnson of Elise Middle School is this month's Engage, Inspire, Succeed Certified Staff Honoree. Ms. Johnson is a living legend in the Northern Moore community, serving students at both Robbins Elementary and Elise Middle for the past 30 years. She began her career as a teacher assistant, serving for 2 years while patiently waiting for her dream job as an English language arts teacher. Ms. Johnson is a dedicated employee working more than 40 hours a week to plan engaging, rigorous lessons designed to help her students grow academically. Her teaching pedagogy is a well-balanced approach, one that develops a nurturing environment, yet pushes her students to perform at a high level. As a veteran teacher, she is not afraid to step outside of her comfort zone and implement new teaching strategies that meet individual learning needs of all her students. She serves as a model of the Bearcat Way. Would members of the Johnson family and Principal Martin please stand and be recognized? Congratulations to Ms. Johnson. Anna Simmons, please join Chair Thompson and Vice Chair Carter at the front. Anna Simmons of the Community Learning Center at Pinckney is this month's Engage, Inspire, Succeed Support Staff honoree. Ms. Simmons serves as the data manager, bookkeeper, receptionist, and administrative assistant to the principal of the Community Learning Center at Pinckney and Connect Virtual Academy. Although Ms. Simmons has many responsibilities, she still manages to bring smiles to the faces of our students, families, and faculty every day. She is often the first to arrive and one of the last to leave school each day. Ms. Simmons understands the brilliance of our alternative learners and ensures students they are cared for, especially in their toughest moments. She also takes her personal time to make improvements on our campus, from planting beautiful flowers to decorating our learning spaces to bringing joy to all who enter. She has an eye for making our campus welcoming. As a proud mom and wife, she values family above all things, and we are so grateful that she is part of our school community. Would the Simmons family and Principal Wilson please stand and be recognized? Congratulations, Ms. Simmons.
Please be careful. Thank you.
Ethan Spain of Pinecrest High School is this month's Engage, Inspire, Succeed student honoree. Ethan was unable to attend tonight's meeting due to participating in an NCHSSA tennis playoffs, so we will recognize him at next month's board meeting. This month, we will recognize additional teachers for their outstanding accomplishments. Karen Wilson, please join Chair Thompson and Vice Chair Carter at the front. Is that Kenna?
My mom's name is Karen, it's okay.
Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize.
I call you Karen, that's fine.
So, Kenna Wilson, okay. And I do apologize for that. The following honorees earned advanced degrees while employed at Moore County Schools. Christina Harrison, a master's from Carthage Elementary School. Kenna Wilson, a doctorate, so that's Dr. Wilson, of the Community Learning Center at Pinckney. Mackenzie Sauvé, a master's from New Century Middle School. Denise Olson, a master's from Pinecrest High School. Erica Paredes, a master's from Bass Lakeview Elementary School. And Heidi Williams, a master's from Bass Lakeview Elementary Schools. For those who are unable to attend tonight's meeting, their principal will present the certificate to them on behalf of the Board of Education at their respective schools. Would members of the Wilson family please stand and be recognized? Congratulations, Dr. Wilson.
Congratulations, Dr.
this does conclude our Engage, Inspire, and Succeed honorees. Congratulations.
Thanks, Bob. At this time, we will have our program highlight for this evening. Dr. Locklear.
Thank you, Madam Chair, board members, good evening. Yes, our program highlight this month is certainly a special one. It's one I think the board has looked forward to in the past, highlighting the work of our Student Advisory Council through the superintendent. And serving as the interim superintendent, the last meeting of the Student Advisory Council this year was in person for the first time since pre-pandemic, and that was wonderful. And it was quite an honor to be in that room with those students and hear their feedback and thoughts and reflections on the work they've done this year. And so Ms. Dedman and also Ms. Maynor, I believe, are going to give us some highlights of that work this evening. Ms. Dedman.
Thank you. Good evening, Madam Chair, Dr. Locklear, members of the board. This evening, I'm pleased to share with you the work of our Student Advisory Council this year. The purpose of the Superintendent's Student Advisory Council is to hear directly from the students regarding their experience in the schools. It's important to get their feedback about our initiatives and efforts so that we know the impact they have had on the students. Each middle and high school principal appoints 2 to 3 students per year. Some of our members remain on the council for multiple years throughout graduation. The council has been meeting virtually since April of 2020, but we were able to come together in person, as Dr. Locklear said, for April. And that was great fun. These are, next slide, please, there we go. These are our members of our Student Advisory Council members in 21-22. As you can see, each of our secondary schools is represented. Okay. So we had 4 topics for the 21-22 school year. Obviously, COVID management was one of them. We reviewed the COVID updates and received feedback at each meeting from the students. Our second topic occurred last October when the district was seeking feedback about the student surveys. We wanted to hear from the students themselves as we were seeking feedback from the community. In December, we presented our state-required school mental health improvement plan and asked them for feedback about the plan itself as well as its implementation. Our fourth topic in February, we asked for feedback about 2 specific strategies from Objective 1 of our strategic plan, Engaging School Cultures. We asked them about utilizing resources to support safe and healthy schools and providing a wide range of extracurricular activities and removing barriers to student performance. In April, we reviewed each of our 4 topics and planned this presentation. We were impressed that they had made the connection between the strategic plan and the mental health plan. They pointed out that safe and healthy school cultures and opportunities for engaging extracurriculars go hand in glove with enhancing mental health supports for all students. Okay. So the students wanted to point out that overall we did a great job with our COVID-19 response. They very much appreciated us keeping them in school as much as possible. And they also felt like the students themselves did a good job of following the protocols to keep people safe. They appreciated being able to use the technology for virtual learning. They felt like we did a good job with that, effective resourcing. But students really appreciate being back face-to-face learning. And the biggest takeaway that they talked about was they were ready to move on from COVID-19. They were done talking about it. They even talked about whether we should even talk about it tonight. So the student surveys in October, the SAC students were in favor of providing surveys to students. They felt like they were important tools for accessing the culture of schools, understanding the feelings of students, and improving safety and wellness. Surveys give students the opportunity to provide feedback about their school. One issue they did talk about is they think a lot of students were concerned about the anonymous surveys. Were they really anonymous? And so if we were to do it again, they wanted us to know that we should spend more time assuring them about the anonymity. Okay, so we went to the mental health plan next. And the students believe that the state mental health plan is very important because it focuses on improving student participation, morale, and overall well-being. Elements of the required state mental health plan are evident in classrooms because they all felt really strongly that their teachers had really good relationships with them. When they were away from their classrooms, they felt that warmth a little bit less often. And so they encouraged expanding our Capturing Kids' Hearts program to build connections and support engagement with school. And again, they did talk about the mental health plan should be included as part of our district's strategic plan. And finally, we gave them a couple things about the strategic plan to look at, give us feedback on. They felt like focusing on positive school cultures through the effective use of resources and providing for extracurricular activities were really important to keep into the plan. They also felt like it could be even more effective if the students were encouraged in how to spend those resources. And other focuses of the plan would be to improve transportation to extracurriculars, additional athletic opportunities, expanding facilities, and more options for advanced learning. So that was the takeaway from those. We'd like to thank you so much, all of our members, the Superintendent Student Advisory Council representatives, for taking their time and effort out of their school days throughout the year to join us and giving us honest feedback about the topics that we've given them questions about, and we really look forward to working with them again next year. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Desmond. I just had one question for you. I had one question. Can you tell me, is this a council that meets once a month, or how often do you guys meet?
We meet 4 times a year.
Okay, okay,
Yeah.
okay. I missed that. Okay. Board members, you have any questions for Ms. Desmond? Thank you again. Appreciate your presentation. Next, we have our consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Is there any that oppose? Motion carries 7-0. At this time, we will have our public address to the board. Madam Vice Chair. After that, yeah.
Just as a reminder, speakers are limited to 3 minutes per speaker, and we ask that you please pay a little attention to the clock that will be up at the front so that you might know how much time you have left. We ask that you please remember that comments must not be specifically directed at particular employees or students within our school system. If you will come to the podium down front, I'm going to go ahead and call out the first 5 names, and if those 5 speakers can move to this side of the auditorium so that we can expedite our speaking. The first 5 are Kevin Lewis, Sherry Locklear, Michelle Cunningham, Jim Peterson, and Tom Lasapio.
Okay. While the speakers are coming up, let's just take a moment for any of our guests. If you want to take a moment to leave, we will allow you to do that, please, at this time.
Madam Vice Chair, how many people do we have?
11.
Okay, thank you. 11.
Thank you so much, Madam Vice Chair.
Our first speaker is Kevin Lewis.
Thank you very much. Have a good evening. We have a strange situation in Moore County schools where some of the elderly want to control the curriculum of children with whom they have no real connection. They are not parents and probably not even grandparents of children in the school, and they probably live in Pinehurst where they don't even have connection with others. 2 of the school board candidates are 6 decades older than the public school students. Yet they want to frame the agenda and curriculum for the students who cannot imagine the vanished world of their great-grandparents, adding a new spin to the grandfather clause. I remember when those now senior baby boomers of the 60s refused to accept the dictates of 1900, which would be 60 years prior. Now they are bored, ridiculous bourgeois, hoping that the rapture will sweep the world away rather than accept that this world will advance over them with new ways of thinking. Our students need to prepare for what's next, not what was, and not repeat the patterns of the frankly greedy proprietary baby boomers who are not known for their unconditional philanthropy. Now, this is a very public thing. Beth Ann Pratt has now lost 2 lawsuits against Moore County Schools. Is Ms. Pratt planning on reimbursing Moore County Schools for the legal fees it incurred defending itself against the frivolous Facebook suit?
How long will you allow personal attacks at these meetings?
Mr.
That's
Windsor.
out of line.
Mr.
You guys need to do something about that.
Well, let us ask our attorney to weigh in on that.
She is behind the antics of about 20 people, including 2 irresponsible anti-vaxxers who I will not name.
Sir, can you just wait 1 second? He's just going to address.
Right, so
I don't.
Let him address.
Excuse me, yeah, hold off, the attorney is going to speak.
Right, so with regards to public comment, I believe the board's policy includes specific language regarding personal attacks and asking individuals to refrain from those, as well as sharing confidential student and personnel information. I don't know Ms. Pratt, whether she is an employee of the Moore County Schools, if it would fall within that exception. The board chair does have authority with regards to disruptions at board meetings, and if that's something I can speak to further if needed.
So it's specific to employees or students? The policy is specific to students and employees within Moore County Schools? Is that correct?
And I don't have it in front of me, but I believe it also requests that speakers refrain from personal attacks.
Okay, for personal attacks, okay.
This was in the pilot. This is a very public suit.
Okay. So we just asked if you just refrain from calling public individuals' names, please. Thank you.
That was the only one.
Thank you.
So this woman is behind the antics of about 20 people, including 2 very public anti-vaxxers. One of the ridiculous anti-vaxxers sent an email to Moore County Schools stating that she had the right to decide who can talk at this meeting, include if they don't meet her standards. This is their free speech. One of the other school candidates on her free speech thing tried to overturn a legitimate election on January 6th with the blithe explanation that it was her First Amendment right. I hope she didn't teach civics. As for standardized test, I am dyslexic, and I could never do multiple choice tests, yet I've been publishing for 40 years in national magazines. I deal with the film industry. We have a very visual, technological country now, a world. This is where it is. It is not on the printed page, it's technology. I work with sound editors, the film editors, visual arts people. We have a very vibrant country, and it is a reading country, not to be on some standardized test. Thank you very much.
Our next speaker is Sherry Locklear.
Of 2022, I am a student from Pinecrest High School. I would just like to say that Pinecrest has gotten kind of like completely out of hand. They don't ever defend their students anymore when it comes to teachers. I understand that they are adults and they need to be respected, but that goes a long way because the adults need to respect us and they really don't. I got ISS for calling my mother because my third block teacher, Miss Fraser, decided to take and stick her finger in my hand because I simply said, "Hello, can you please put in my grades in the grade book? You have them in as 4 zeros. I understand you have a lot of grading to do."
I'm going to ask you to stop, but we can't understand anything that's going out.
Did y'all understand it? All of them can.
It's hard for us.
We can't hear any of
Well, I'll
it.
send you a copy of it.
That would be fine. Can you tell us who's speaking? Because this should be your 3 minutes of
It
speech.
is my 3 minutes.
Is that your voice
Can we stop
on the
the clock?
recording?
Can we stop the clock? All right.
This is my daughter.
Was she not able to be present this
No, she
evening?
cannot, because the school bus don't even get off the school until after 4:30.
All right, do you want to continue? Yeah. Okay. But if you would, please send it to us, because we, those of us up here can't hear it. Go right ahead.
Of 2022, I am a student from Pinecrest High School. I would just like to say that Pinecrest has gotten kind of like completely out of hand. They don't ever defend their students anymore when it comes to teachers. I understand that they are adults and they need to be respected, but that goes a long way because the adults need to respect us and they really don't. I got ISS for calling my mother because my third block teacher, Miss Fraser, decided to take and stick her finger in my hand because I simply said, "Hello, can you please put in my grades in the grade book? You have them in as 4 zeros. I understand you have a lot of grading to do,
Ma'am,
but
there was
you
a
know,
teacher-
I
was
kinda
there
need
a
them in
teacher
because my
name
mother's upset about my
included in
grade right
that?
now, and I did them on time. I have proof.
Please,
I showed her
no,
work,
no
and
more.
she just completely
Please,
shut it
let's
down,
don't,
and she screamed at me
have
to worry about
teacher name
myself,
or
and I simply
students'
stated that I
names
was worrying
included.
about myself, that the situation was I had a bad grade in the class, my mother was upset with me and her, and all I needed was her to put them in. I showed her the work and everything, and she just continuously to scream at me and yell at me. So I let that go, whatever. The next day in class, I come back and I'm sitting down. I haven't said a word. I'm getting out my stuff, and she just starts yelling at me for talking. And it wasn't even me talking. This girl
Ma'am,
behind me.
let's just
and,
stop that. That's relative to
yeah,
a teacher.
so she does stuff like that all the time. So, you know, she stuck
Now,
her
this
finger
has
up in my
got to do
face,
with the
and
school
afterwards,
system.
right when the bell rang, everyone's on their phone. I go to walk out of the classroom, and I call my mother, because who else am I going to tell about this? Like, she's upset with me, and she thinks that I'm not doing my work. Obviously, I'm going to explain to my mom what's going on.
We
So I
just
decided
need
to
to
do that.
stop,
I got
ma'am.
written up for
If you'd
quote-unquote
stop
being
at
on my
this
phone
time.
and being an
Thank
disruption
you.
in class. I
Thank
got
you.
a day of ISS.
If you would send that to the superintendent.
I might remind people that this is 3 minutes allocated to the speaker who is present. This is not a time for recorded messages. Our next speaker is Michelle Cunningham.
Madam Chair, like the vice chair, I couldn't hear it either. I mean, obviously, the speakers are pointed that
Yes,
way.
yes.
And if they turn that up, we get feedback. So I had an issue that I couldn't hear it. I just want to make sure that we're clear on the reason why we're turning that speaker away. I didn't hear, I couldn't hear it, so I couldn't tell whether or not there were employee names mentioned, right? The only thing I would say is, because we're not able to tell, that we make this law, Sherry, a promise that, I don't think we have a rule against someone playing a recording. I think that that's been allowed in the past. I just think that it needs to be screened, and then we'll play it at some future point.
We had someone to let us know that a teacher's name was mentioned in that.
Okay. Yeah, I couldn't hear it, so I
Yeah,
don't know.
thank you. Okay, next speaker.
Michelle Cunningham.
My name is Michelle Cunningham, she, her, and I am an educator for the students of Moore County Schools. Pure hatred, bigotry, and discrimination has been thrown at our teachers and LGBTQ community, with certain members of our Board of Education adding fuel to the fire. I am here to speak out for the fierce and extraordinary teachers in our county and the wonderful students and families we serve. You don't know what it's like to have a student cry in your arms on Monday morning because they have been away from home all weekend while their grandmother works double shifts and they only saw her for the 30 minutes it took to get ready for school. You don't know what it's like to keep a toothbrush, baby wipes, and a hairbrush at school for a student who cannot get clean at home since they don't have running water. Because the law states in North Carolina, as long as they have access to a water source, they're fine. You don't know the fear and heartbreak of finding out a student has been placed in foster care outside of our county because their parents were arrested. You don't know what it's like to watch a student lash out because they dread going home to a hostile environment. You don't know what it's like to have a student come out to you because you are the most trusted person in their life, because at home they constantly hear negativity about the LGBTQ community. You don't know the anguish of coming to school only to find out one of your students has committed suicide, and then blaming yourself for not seeing the signs sooner. You also don't know what it's like to handle these situations, take care of your other students, and teach the curriculum simultaneously while carrying the weight of these horrible situations in your heart and listening to society demonize you for doing your job because they can't accept people who are different from them. But you know who does? Teachers, instructional assistants, specialists, social workers, nurses, principals, APs, bus drivers, custodians, and cafeteria workers. They experience these situations and more daily. But instead of supporting and respecting teachers for the highly educated and trained professionals we are, some of you openly mock us and not only condone but actively participate in the war being waged on us. We expect and deserve better from our board. Due to your actions and inaction, some teachers will find new employment where they are supported, while others will stay because our students matter and they are worth it. We will continue loving and accepting our students unconditionally. We will continue witnessing their moments of triumph in the classroom. We will continue building confident, competent, and respectful citizens who are ready to take on the world. We will continue engaging our students in lessons that will last a lifetime and inspiring them to be their best selves and reach beyond their potential, and giving them the tools they need to be successful in everything they pursue. So here's your homework from your teachers. Listen to us and support us. Reflect on your biases so you may empathize with others who are different. Serve the diverse needs of our community for the sake of our students and their families. Lead with compassion, integrity, and humility.
Thank you. Jim Peterson.
Hello, my name's Jim Peterson, and just want to say I'm donating. I dropped off about a dozen of these books at the main office on 15501. It's called Irreversible Damage, The Transgender Craze Seducing Our Daughters, written by Abigail Schreier. The book, since I've been publicly called a homophobe and stuff, it's number 11 on the LGBTQ plus rating list. About the author, Abigail Schreier is a writer for the Wall Street Journal. She's a graduate of Columbia College, graduate University of Oxford and Yale Law School. She lives in Los Angeles, California. Reviews online about the book, out of 6,065 ratings, has 4.7 stars out of 5. Some other reviews for the book. Irreversible damage has caused a storm. Abigail Schreier, a Wall Street Journal writer, does something yet simple yet devastating. She rigorously lays out the facts. That's from the Times of London. Courage is a rare trait. Abigail Schreier has it in abundance. That's from the New York Times. Abigail Schreier has actual courage. Ben Shapiro. A must-read for all those who care about our girls and women. That's from another writer from the New York Times. So there's a dozen of these donated to the schools. They're at the main office on 15501. I guess I'll leave this last copy I have with Dr. Metcalf or Dr. Locklear. That's all I have.
Thank you. Before Mr. Lesapio, our next 5 speakers are Vic Allen, Corbin Seabold, Teresa Brown, Jane Sorrentino, and Samuel Kearns. Mr. Lesapio.
Good evening. At the last school board meeting held on April 11th, 2022, one of the public speakers read from the Bible in an attempt to make a very weak comparison between the Bible and a book called George. On April 21, 2022, I attended a school board candidates forum held in the Pinehurst Village Hall. This forum was attended by only 2 candidates, Robin Calcutt and Rolly Sampson. I mention them only in terms of information. The master of ceremonies for this event was the same person who made the Bible-George comparison. I understand this individual is an outward supporter of the 2 candidates that I just mentioned. On or about April 17th, in the middle of these 2 events, there was a discussion on Facebook regarding a means of reporting any Moore County teacher that strayed from the normal curriculum and entered into discussions with their students about topics not approved by you all. That same person, who I've been referring to, posted the following statement on Facebook, and I quote, "Please listen. And by the way, we have spies in the administration all over the school system who will let us know any parent that criticizes a teacher for doing his job I feel bad for that poor student. See if they pass class next year. I have a screenshot of that statement with me today, which I will give to your secretary. So now I would like to ask each member of the school board in writing, do you find this statement about spies to be correct in your school system? I also ask each member of the school board if they approve of students being used as pawns, as clearly suggested in this threatening statement. Do you feel that this is a real threat of retaliation to parents who express their concerns? Do you feel that this statement supports censorship of our parents by a specific group represented in the word "we" included in the statement? I publicly ask those school board students I publicly ask those school board candidates that are clearly being supported by this individual that made this inflammatory remark if you feel comfortable with that support, and do you feel you are included in the "we" reference in the statement? My last question for the school board. Will you continue to allow personal attacks by certain speakers, such as we witnessed at the last school board meeting and tonight, where at the last school board meeting an individual was called a traitor, where at the last school board meeting this person was called ass-holy? If that is going to be your policy, at the next meeting I will bring a truckload of my own personal attacks. Please look into this and see whether this is appropriate for these meetings or not. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Allen? I would ask that you please hold back on applause so that Mr. Allen gets his due. Due time. Yeah.
Yes, I did. I had bad knees. I'm sorry, this is where my... No, you're not sorry about anything.
Excuse me, please remember that you're in our business meeting. Thank you.
Mr. Gooch, if you would speak with the gentleman. Mr. Allen, now your 3 minutes.
Good evening, I'm Vic Allen, I'm the shop teacher at Carthage Christian School. And today's scripture is from Psalm 127. Except the Lord build the house, they labor in vain that build it. Except the Lord keep the city, the watchman waketh but in vain. Then in verse 3 it says, Lo, children are a heritage of the Lord, and the fruit of the womb is his reward. Now, everybody knows the turmoil right now that's happening about the abortion law, taken from the federal government and given it to the states. What I want to know is, where do these people learn this? Where do these young people learn about life in the beginning of life? Where did they learn to tear down the statues in Raleigh? Where did they learn that? They learned it in the government schools is where they learned it. They didn't learn it around the kitchen table, I don't think. Hey, and I appreciate you coming up and talking. You're the first teacher I've heard talk at one of these meetings. Thank you very much. But education is the acquisition of wisdom and true knowledge. And education comes from God, not government. Every person born asks themselves 3 questions their whole life. How did I get here? Why am I here? And what happens when I leave or die? Because everybody's going to die. Government education answers none of that. That's why we're having a problem with all this abortion talk. Well, when you teach evolution, you teach that life has no meaning. There's no meaning and there's no hope. If you teach that you came from slime somewhere, and all of a sudden, by accident, all of a sudden you're at the top of the food chain with all this knowledge, why are you here? But we teach at Calvary Christian School that you were born in God's image. Every man was born in God's image. And why are you here? You're here to worship God and to love one another. Now, we have the same problems at Calvary Christian Schools that you do. In my shop class, I got 3 kids raised by their grandparents. I got kids without parents. I got a kid that his father left on Christmas Day. We have the same problems. We get the same kids from the same place as you do. Your palaces are too big. You can't manage them. You can't manage their problems with all this. They must be smaller. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Allen. Corbin Seabold.
Here, let them come around.
I will. You want me to stand up there with you?
Yeah.
I'll stand up there with you.
I'm Corbin Seabold. I'm a fourth grade student at Aberdeen Elementary School. 4 years ago, as a kindergartner, I was campaigning for a bond for the new school.
Stacy, will that mic actually come off where you could hold it up to him? There you go. There you go.
So the first thing I'm going to be talking about is the way that the advanced students are handled. See, in the school I'm in, I am in AIG, and we used to have daily, every single week, every other week, because the AID teacher doubles for this school's AIG, or the Carthage Elementary School. So 1 week we will have 5 days of AIG, but now it's only 2 days because she's more busy. And in class, there's not enough challenging work. So and there's not enough challenge for the students that aren't in advanced, which is why we have some class clowns. Misbehavior, the second thing is misbehavior issues and how they are dealt with. So in my class, there are some people who are always misbehaving every day, and they've only been sent to the office around 2 times that I can count of. And so basically, the teachers don't have the abilities to send them because half the time they won't listen and just stay in the classroom. And the third topic is keeping teachers, because the teacher who I had at the beginning of the year has left the school, and she found a better opportunity at a different school. But we have a different teacher, and we believe that she has quit because she hasn't been here for 6 days in total. And that is all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Teresa Brown. Sorry, Teresa Brown.
Another son, his name, I won't say because I don't want to embarrass him, but he is a senior at Pinecrest. We moved here in 2014. He was actually 2015. He was halfway through his 5th grade year. We came from Georgia, where my son was in a magnet school. For those of you who don't know, magnet schools are public schools that are handled by the public, but they are completely managed differently. They break down to ethnics, boy ratio, girl ratio, the whole 9 yards. It is completely drawn based after you test in. You have to maintain your grade and your character, which is fabulous, until we moved here, where character is not really a concern. The other problem is that he was way advanced. As a 5th grader, he was at a freshman level. Kind of like my other son, thank God, because I have dyslexia, and I'm so glad they did not get that. My frustration is that now my little one is not liking school because of behavior issues. We are all in an uproar about this book. Let me say, I am very conservative to a point. It's a book. It goes in a library, you check it out, you don't check it out, it doesn't really matter. You guys have put so much emphasis on a book. Most kids are going to talk to their parents or whoever their person is that they live with. I understand that there are issues. We all have issues. If I told you our family drama, you would think it's a fiction. That much drama in my family. But the fact that my son goes to school every day and they call the Fabulous Five, who misbehave every day, they're trying to manage the teacher to manage the class. Like I said, I understand everybody has issues. With that being said, every child is entitled to an education. It seems to me, though, the ones that are advanced or at level get left behind. Because now my son will be half the school year with no teacher. Again, we had this problem in second grade and then COVID hit after we got a teacher. We are not going to be able to have teachers if our kids do not behave. I was a recruiter for 20 years. You can't recruit teachers to come and work in schools with kids who will not behave, and there is nothing that they can do about it. Everyone is mainstreamed in North Carolina until 5 years out, we realize there's a problem. That is not acceptable for the other children who need to learn, who bring everybody up. My son tries to help the other kids, and then he ends up getting stabbed by somebody else in class, and I still haven't seen a true write-up report regarding that. Now I know my kid can be annoying. I'm his mother. I'm annoying, but not annoyed enough to stab him. We need to help our teachers. We need to get kids on the right path.
Thank you. Jane Sorrentino. Ms. Sorrentino? All right, then Samuel Kearns, and then after Mr. Kearns, Robin Calcutt. Mr. Kearns, your flashlight is on. Do you need that to be on? Okay. Understood.
Good evening. My name is Samuel Kearns. There is a quote from the book Life is Funny that says, "Truth is stranger than fiction, but still most of us tend to disbelieve truth before we'll question a lie." Well, Moore County, the truth is, Life is Funny is a wonderful book of real students with real issues and struggles with life. And what makes it so wonderful is that there are heroes in this book. Those heroes are a school teacher, a school counselor, and a loving family who lost their son but still had enough love in their hearts to open their homes to two boys in need. Yes, there is some rough language in this book, but I have heard all of it on my school bus and in our schools. Yes, there are some hard situations in the book, but every situation is on our buses and in our schools. On my bus, I had a student who was homeless, living with whoever would let them stay for a while, and they had a living parent in Moore County. On my bus, I had a student who was living with grandparents because their parents were addicted to drugs. On my bus, I had a student say, "Mr. Sam, I don't know what to do. My 12-year-old little sister is pregnant." On my bus, I have a student who every once in a while still breaks down crying because his best friend committed suicide a few years ago, and he can't understand why he could not stop him. On my bus, I have a student who asked me, what would I do if one of my children were gay? I told her I would still love them anyway. The student then stated that they were gay but couldn't tell their parents because their father would hate them. On my bus, I have been asked about abortion and racism, to which I tell them I can't have this conversation with you. You need to go talk to your parents. We walked past the male students who was wearing makeup and fingernail polish. We walked past the female student who is wearing baggy pants and showing her male underwear that she's wearing and her wife beat-up t-shirt, and we say nothing. But then we remove a book from the library about the struggles that our children are going through. Our children need somewhere to find the answers to their questions when they can't talk to their parents. They need somewhere to turn to see that they aren't by themselves, that there are other children going through the same struggle as them. It's time to take the blinders off, Moore County, and stop hiding from the untruth that this don't happen here, because it's here, all of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Robin Calcutt.
Hold it where I can see it too. Good evening, Madam Chair Thompson, Dr. Locklear, and board members. My name is Robin Calcutt, and thank you for the opportunity to share a message tonight. Over the past 2 years, I have watched, attended, and thought reflectively about the current environment concerning public schools in our own Moore County schools. We witnessed attacks against safety processes, the curriculum, teaching, and even against our teachers, students, and our own board members. What surprised me most was that there are individuals in our community and outside of our community that do not support the purpose and work of public schools. I realize that this is a group of organized individuals with a purpose and not the parents, guardians, or families of the enrolled students. Why would anyone not support Moore County schools or other public schools? Why would anyone say aloud in a large public meeting that our schools are failing our children, quote unquote, which is simply not true? My question is why? What is the actual agenda behind these false statements? Based upon my research over the past 2 years, I suspect that there is a dollar sign and an attempt to privatize educational services behind these accusations. The attempts to cause doubt and disillusionment in the work of public schools and our own teachers is purely misinformation. Think about who will profit the most from the disintegration of public schools. Will the taxpayers benefit? Will the average family benefit? Will our county, state, and country benefit? Our public schools are meant to serve all children. I believe in democracy, a parent's choice, and the founding principle followed in our democracy of the separation of church and state so that our religious freedoms are protected. I believe that when we, taxpayers, support all children with a sound basic education, we, the taxpayers, provide an education that prepares our future citizens to achieve their American dream without strings attached. And you know what? We will all benefit from an educated citizen. I encourage our parents and our community members to contradict this negativity and propaganda by standing up for our schools so that together we can focus on continuing the excellent work of public schools. Thank you.
Thank you. There are no call-in speakers this evening, so that concludes public address.
Thank you. At this time, we're moving into board action on our agenda. Our first item is appointment to the Sandhills Community College Board of Trustees. This is an item that we have at certain times throughout the year. The Moore County Board of Education appoints 4 members to the Sandhills Community College Board of Trustees. Current trustees that have been appointed by the school board include George Little, whose term ends in June of this year, Art Blue, his term ends in June 23, Connie Lovell, her term ends in June 2024, and Gary Evans, who was just appointed last year, and his term runs through June of 2025. Each term is set to begin on July 1st, and all appointments should be made prior to June 30th of the year in which the trustee's term is set to expire. At this time, we had 2 board members who were asked to follow up with the candidates who submitted their application for an appointment as a trustee. So we would like to hear from either Philip and Stacy. And let me just say, we only had 2 individuals who submitted their application. We had Vicki L. Stone, and we had George W. Little Sr. So, Philip, if you would want to make comments, and then Stacy.
Yes, okay, thank you so much. So just like the chair said, we had George Little. He's been on the school board of trustees, or the school trustees. And we also had a new applicant, Vicki Stone, which owns a business right there in Pinehurst. After reaching out and speaking with both, I would recommend that Mr. George Little be reappointed.
Okay.
Do you have anything?
Yeah, I would concur that, I would recommend that George Little be recommended as well.
Okay, thank you. Board members, at this time, we have heard from our board members, and their choice is George Little. Board members, do you have any additional candidates at this time that you would like to present for voting?
Madam Chair, I move the board proceed to appoint Mr. George Little to another term.
I will second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second that we have George Little, who will continue with his next term as Sandhills Community College trustee. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye. Aye. Is there any that oppose? The vote carries 7-0. Thank you so much, Stacy and Philip, for following up with our two candidates.
And can I also say that Mr. George is in the
Mr. Little.
audience, if you want to
He's actually here.
Yes. Thank you for coming.
Madam Chair,
Thank you for all the work you do, Mr. Little. We know you have done a lot for the college, and we appreciate it. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Madam Chair, although I'm very happy with the progress of this evening's meeting, I would like to have a 10-minute recess.
Okay, all right, that sounds good, Mr. Hensley. At this time, we'll take a 10-minute break. We will call our meeting back to order. At this time, we have our next board action of capital projects, bid results, and awards of bids. Dr. Locklear.
Thank you, Madam Chair, board members. At last Monday's work session, Mr. Baraff advised the board on some pending bids that were going to open over the time period of last week. And John administered those bids, and he's here to report back. One of those bids did not meet some requirements, so he's going to brief the board on that, and then also bring you recommendations, our recommendations on moving forward on a couple others. So, John?
Thank you, Dr. Locklear. So the two bids had to do with Carthage Elementary School. One was the pre-K building in the back behind where we're sitting now, and the other one was the boiler supply lines here at the campus. The first one being the HVAC system over in the pre-K building. We advertised for the bids in an informal process. To remind the board, there are two methods for bids, and they're controlled by uniform guidance and the state as far as informal procedure or formal. This one was informal. We received on May 3rd bid. We received one single bid. According to the policy for uniform guidance and for the state, because it was an informal process, we were able to open the bid. The bid was by Fields Plumbing and Heating Company for $130,106. There was one ad alternate for $5,000 to remove all the abandoned components, system ways, etc., related to the mechanical system in the building. This project is funded through the $2.136 million of supplemental funding provided by the county commissioners. The budget was $216,000, less $18,000 for design services, resulting in a savings of $62,894. The other bid that we had advertised, as I mentioned, was for the boiler supply return lines here. We advertised in the formal process because of the anticipated threshold for the cost of that project. We advertised in the pilot, the News and Observer, on the state historically underutilized business bid opportunity website, on the Moore County Schools bid announcements webpage, as well as the engineer sent out information to contractors throughout the area. Bids were due again on May 3rd. We received one bid for the work, and because the requirement has two for an opening, we were unable to open the bids. We immediately turned around and followed the required directions provided by the uniform guidance in the state to rebid the project. Bids will be received on May 17th. At that time, should we receive only one bid, we are permitted to open at that time. I will bring an update on that project in the future.
Thank you. Would you, Mr. Batchelor, would you roll this slide up, please, down so that we can see the bottom? Okay, thank you. So at this time, board members, our superintendent is recommending that we consider a motion to award the bid to replace the HVAC system. As noted by Mr. Barath, is there a motion to approve?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Are there any questions? Are there any comments? Mr. Levy.
Yes, Mr. Barath, just so that the public understands, because they know that we're thinking about making major renovations and possibly getting rid of Carthage Elementary, replacing it with a new school. Can you explain why we are making this kind of repair to this school at this time? I understand we have a very, very good reason to do so, but I think the public needs to know a little bit more about that.
Absolutely. Both of these projects are in need here. Both systems are failing. They're no longer supported. We cannot get parts for them. The boiler condensate piping leaking is causing problems to the boiler as well. It's not just the lines in the terminal locations. So even though there's a discussion about the future of this facility, it would take, as we discussed previously, at least 4 years until that would occur and be ready to be occupied. In that amount of time, we must maintain this campus, these buildings, for students and staff to use. And these systems are in dire need of being replaced.
Thank you.
Any other comments, questions?
Madam Chair, I have two questions. First, Mr. Brath, what do you think the reason is for receiving a low number of bids?
I did not speak with any of the other bidders that had been given the documents to bid upon, but the general consensus is a couple of things. One is work. A lot of them already have too much work on their plate and not enough staff.
Right.
Even the successful bidder had said they were considering, however, they have some staff that they can put on this immediately. So there seems to be a consensus of staffing concerns in the industry on the amount of work that's out there and as limited as come by, as well as timeline for work and guaranteeing a price. There are some systems that I've spoken to where they have expressed concerns on a large project bid about guaranteeing a price of something they won't buy for a year and a half. And as we know, those prices seem to be escalating on a regular basis. So I don't have a definitive. All I can give you is generality on what I have heard.
Okay. And my second question, I recognize Fields Heating and Plumbing as a local vendor, and I'm glad to see that we're continuing to use local vendors as much as we can. But we did only receive one bid. So in your experience, do you consider that bid fair and reasonable and in line with what you expected?
That I did along with the engineer when we opened and reviewed it.
Okay. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Any other questions, comments? All in favor of proceeding as recommended by the superintendent, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any opposed? Let it be known by saying aye. Motion carries 7-0. Next, we have board action of custodial product support services results in award of bid. Dr. Locklear.
Thank you again, Madam Chair. Yes, Mr. Braff's going to stay up and advise the board on another bid that he noted at the work session last week that we'll be opening up for custodial services and support for the contract for the future years. And Mr. Braff will brief the board, and also this comes with a recommendation to approve the services to Seussical Incorporated. I'll let John go through that information. John?
Thank you, Dr. Locklear. So the bids for custodial services of product support was open on May 4th. Again, we advertised this in the same method of formal bids as I did for the Carthage projects. We received the following three bids. Brame Specialty Company in the amount of $402,880.20 per year. Seussical Incorporated in the amount of $245,100 for the first year and $250,800 for years 2 through 4, and Seven Oaks Supply Company Incorporated for $284,900 per year. Seven Oaks Supply Company is our current vendor for these services. They provided these services for the past 4 years to Moore County schools. The apparent low and responsive bidder is Seussical Incorporated. Prior three vendors back, Seussical serviced Moore County schools for these products and services. It is a recommendation that Seussical Services be awarded the contract to provide the service amount of $245,100 for the first year and $250,800 for years 2 through 4. The previous agreement for services was $232,500. That is $13,000 less than the Seussical first year bid, and we deem that as reasonable for the increase in cost and products that have been experienced. We have confidence in Seussical being able to perform the services as they had done previously for Moore County schools, and I'm happy to respond to any questions you may have.
Board.
I have a question. Okay. This is apples to apples, right?
Yes, it is.
I mean, our toilet paper is important. And
We have learned that the hard way.
Board members, we have a recommendation by our superintendent to proceed with the custodial products by Seussical. Seussical Incorporated in the amount of $245,000. Is there a motion to proceed?
So moved.
Is there a second? Ed?
Second.
Okay, thank you. Any comments, additional questions? All in favor of the motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0.
Thank you.
Next, we have our second reading of policies. Madam Vice Chair and Dr. Alpenfels.
Again, thank you to Dr. Alpenfels and Mr. Weber, who helped walk the policy committee through these, Mr. Levy and Mr. Dennison and myself. We have made the changes as noted at last week's first reading. Are there any questions for any of the committee or for Dr. Alpenfels at this time?
Ms. Carter, it was actually Mr. Holmes who served.
Oh, that's right, I'm sorry. Mr. Holmes, thank you very much. Are there any questions? All right, seeing none, the committee recommends the adoption of the policies.
Is there a motion to approve?
You don't need.
The motion's been made, there's no need for a second.
I'm sorry, I do
Okay.
have one question.
Okay.
Down here on the end, don't forget about me.
Mr. Hensley.
There was one part that we talked about in the work session about being removed in this round. Was that removed?
Yes, sir.
Okay, thank you.
Did we get a second?
Oh, well, there's no need for a second
No
since
need.
it's an offered from committee. Point of order.
Okay.
So the committee offers the motion, and the motion needs not a second.
Okay. So at this time,
Point of order, I would like to just question that with the attorney.
okay.
That is true at committee meetings only, or is that true at open sessions also?
Committee meeting motions do not require a second. With regards to approval of the policies by the board, it is my recommendation that there's a motion made by a member that would be seconded if there is a second.
Okay. So at this time, we'll vote. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Sorry, if I could be more clear, my recommendation is that there's a motion to approve made by a member if any member is so moved.
So I moved, so moved.
Yeah. Okay. All in favor, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries 7-0. Next, we have the student device refresh for grades 2 through 5. Dr. Locklear.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Dr. Powers, joined by Mr. Eklund and Mr. Herron, are bringing this back to the board at our work session last week. They hit some key pieces of information about this refresh, the why behind the need for this refresh, and how effective use of technology is being used in our classrooms. We continue to be supported, and of course where the funding is coming from. And I think Dr. Powers is going to review some of those key points and then of course be available for any questions the board may have. This does have my recommendation that the board move forward with approving this request, and then we would be moving forward, staff would, to go to our county commissioners. Because of the nature of this request, it also needs their approval to move forward with utilizing their digital learning fund. So, Seth?
Very good. Thank you, Dr. Locklear. So yes, I am going to just briefly summarize the request and then offer a bit of additional feedback that we did gain from our elementary principals. Moore County Schools currently provides for one-to-one technology for all students grades K through 12. The current student devices in grades 2 through 5, which are Chromebooks, have an end-of-life date and will no longer be Google supported as of June 2022. The district is seeking to purchase new Chromebooks as a refresh for the devices for grades 2 through 5 as a part of the district's 5-year digital learning and technology sustainability plan. This will ensure that students in these grade levels have one-to-one access to working Chromebooks for the upcoming 2022-23 school year. The cost of the refresh would be covered from the digital learning fund provided by the County of Moore. At this time, that funding can only be used to support digital learning. As a reminder, one-to-one technology is not meant to replace the teacher, and person-to-person interactive instructional practice and one-to-one technology is also not meant to be used for the majority of classroom activity. Instead, technology use as a part of classroom instruction should be a supplemental resource that is used to enhance the content taught by the teacher. Our teachers are not required to use technology in their classrooms, and teachers do have autonomy to use the technology available to best meet instructional needs of students. Our district curriculum and instruction and technology teams are currently working on instructional best practices related to lesson planning that include guidelines for technology use as a supplemental resource that we share with teachers as we move toward the 22-23 school year. Finally, I'd like to just share the thoughts of our principals. As the instructional leaders in their buildings, we recently asked our elementary principals for their feedback related to the importance of maintaining one-to-one technology for grades 2 through 5, and they shared the following. One-to-one technology is extremely important in the elementary grades for both instruction and testing. After having one-to-one access, anything less would be viewed as taking a step backwards. One-to-one access is a vital supplemental resource for instruction, and whole group use in lessons and activities would no longer be possible without one-to-one. Without one-to-one access, student testing and assessment would become more difficult. Almost all required state testing and assessments are now completed electronically. Assessments requiring access to technology are continuous throughout the course of the year and are no longer just a few days at the end of the year, as with end of grade testing. Principals shared that without one-to-one devices, testing and assessment would eat into instructional time, and completion of testing and assessments would not be possible within our current testing windows that we use. Principals also expressed concern that not having one-to-one access in grades 2 through 5 could create equity issues between grade levels, since K1 are approved to have one-to-one devices in terms of iPads, and of course in grades 6 through 12, we also currently have access to one-to-one technology through Chromebooks. And finally, principals share that they feel so strongly about the importance of one-to-one at the elementary level that if the district did not provide for this resource, they feel like they would need to seek alternative funding sources at the school level in order to make technology purchases. As Dr. Locklear mentioned, if the board were to approve the recommendation for maintaining those devices with a device refresh, we would seek to take this to the county commissioners for their approval at their June 7th, 2022 meeting. I'll be glad, Mr. Eklund, Mr. Herring, and I'll be glad to take any questions you may have.
Mr. Jason?
Before discussion, I did want to key in on that point that that the board's approval, if the board chooses to do so, would be contingent on county commissioner approval. So if a member were to make a motion to approve, I would recommend that that motion include language stating that it is contingent on county commissioner approval.
So having said that, Jason, the motion is going to be exactly like you said. Approval with contingent of county commissioner approval. And that motion is on the floor. Do I have a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Is there any comments, questions?
Yes, Madam Chair.
Mr.
Philip.
I just have a question.
I defer to
After the devices are obsolete, what happens to them? Do we recycle them, get money back, or?
Yes, actually, we take them and we put them out to bid to surplus companies, and we've actually been very successful in getting multiple surplus companies to bid on the technology for whether they're able to reuse it. In this case, they're probably grind it up to get the precious metals out of it and reuse it. That's one of the reasons we go with the lease purchase, is that we don't have to deal with returning the devices. We can just surplus them out.
Thank you.
Mr. Hensley?
One thing that I've noticed, first of all, I'm a technology guy. Everyone knows that. I said that in the work session. Reliable vote for technology. But one thing that I've noticed since I've been on this board is the question is always, do you want? Do you want? And the reason, and there's never a counterbalance. Do you want this in lieu of that, right? Our budget is a pie, and the pie doesn't get bigger. If we take a slice of pie for something else, that takes away a slice from something else. A good example that everyone could relate to is if somebody said, Mr. Metcalf, would you like a Porsche? I don't know if he wants a Porsche, right? Everybody, wants a Porsche or a Corvette or whatever. But the real question is, do you want a Porsche in lieu of making your house payment and getting your house payment repossessed? Then it's a different question, right? So the reason I bring this up is when we ask the principals, would you like one-to-one technology? Yeah, of course I want one-to-one technology. But the real question is, how about 1-to-2 ratio and I give you 3 full-time teachers? So the question is not, do you want technology? The question is, like, again, if we did 1-to-2 ratio, then we would be able to get 3 more teachers. And we need to start thinking of all the money that we spend in terms of teachers to reduce classroom size, because the smaller we get our classrooms, the more effective our teachers will be. And then we might find that if we get our classrooms small enough that these disciplinary problems go away. We may find that we don't need as many social workers. We may find that we don't need as many psychiatrists, because smaller classrooms, the teacher has more control, they have better discipline. So I never see a counterbalancing trade-off question. And that is very valid, and I would ask my fellow board members to consider that, because, you know, although it's called technology money, you know, it comes from the county. We could spend it on whatever we want, with a few conversations with the county commissioners to include additional teachers. So here are my thoughts on this. I personally have my doubts about a need for a 1-to-1 ratio in K through 5. I realize this is 2 through 5, but first of all, I would say, you know, maybe we need a 1-to-1 ratio in 5th grade. Maybe we need a 1-to-1 ratio in 4th and 5th grade, but maybe we could do a 1-to-2 ratio in 2nd or 3rd grade. So I would say that 2nd grade through 5th grade, the requirement is probably not the same. And then here's the other points that I would make. There's discussions about lessening usage of devices in the lower grades, return to textbooks. We, as the board, are redoing our strategic plan. We don't even know what our strategic plan, well, we've got an idea, but we haven't finalized our strategic plan. We're going through the selection of a new superintendent. So I guess my question is, I was going to ask, what's the harm? Well, we know that some are going out of end of life, and if they go end of life, you don't get your virus protection, you don't get your updates. We all know that. The other thing about this is a 4-year lease. Again, we don't have a strategic plan, we don't have a new superintendent, but we're going to commit $1.some odd million of our funds for 4 years, and we don't have a strategic, we don't have our new strategic plan. So what I would like to do, and I would like for my fellow board members to thoughtfully consider this, I don't know the exact verbiology, I don't have my cheat sheet, but I would like to amend the motion to approve a 1-to-2 ratio, which means we're buying half as many now, which, you know, that's another question. All of a sudden, the world is dependent on a 1-to-1 ratio. I just heard that from what Mr. Powers said. How long have we had a 1-to-1 ratio, and how did they exist 4 years ago or 3 years ago before we had a 1-to-1 ratio? Well, they could do, you know, I heard end of grade tests. I understand, I support iReady, I understand iReady, I understand end of grade tests, but I also understand port and starboard shifts. You know, half the students do iReady while the other half are getting in-person instruction, and they flip. Same thing with end of grade tests. So I think more county schools existed before there was 1-to-1 ratio. Anyway, I make a motion that we approve a 1-to-2 ratio. We amend the motion for a 1-to-2 ratio.
Go ahead.
I was going to ask if there was a second to his motion.
I'll go ahead and second it.
Okay.
And again, the one point I would make about a 1-to-2 ratio, and we're going into discussion, right? The point I would make about a 1-to-2 ratio is if we buy half as many now, that will give us a port and starboard capability to start school in the fall. Then we can finish up our strategic plan. We can have discussions among the board, what we really want in 2nd and 3rd grade, what we need in favor of technology, or do we want more teachers, or do we want something else with this money? That's my only point.
So for clarification, just so we know where we are, Jason, we had a motion on the floor to approve the dollars as presented by the superintendent,
with a second. So now we have an amended motion on the floor with a second. It is thoughts on proceeding?
So there's a motion on the floor to approve the student device refresh as presented by the superintendent, contingent on county commissioner approval. That motion was seconded.
Right.
During discussion, Mr. Hensley made a motion, and just for my own clarification, is it a motion
It was
to amend?
It was a motion to amend
And I
the
think-
motion, instead of it being a 1-to-1, to be a 1-to-2.
And I guess, so,
Point
as
of
board
order.
chair, you do have the authority to rule motions in and out of order. My question would be whether the motion to amend is germane to the original motion, and I don't quite understand it enough to know what it
Okay,
is.
so we have, we'll proceed with that, because basically what the motion is that to go forward, but instead of it being a 1-to-1, to change it to a 1-to-2 ratio. Okay. So are there any other comments?
Yes, ma'am.
Point of order, Madam Chair. I believe that we have an amendment to the motion, so that we will be discussing the amendment to the motion, and then we would vote on the amendment to the motion.
Exactly.
And then if it passes or fails, then we would vote on the motion itself.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Dennis?
Yeah, I agree with Superintendent's recommendation. I do not agree with this. We need lots of things. We can switch back and forth, but I'll listen to the educators on what we need most at this point in time, and I will not vote to approve the amendment.
Okay. Any other comments?
Yes, Madam Chair. Just in reference to some of the ways Mr. Hensley sees that we could use this funding. Now, it's my understanding all of this funding comes out of the county digital funding appropriation, which is $750,000 a year, to be used only for digital devices or the supports for them.
That's correct.
That's correct. It's not aimed at teachers or teacher assistants or cafeteria workers or anything else along those lines. It's aimed specifically at digital devices and the supports for them.
That is correct.
Okay, so it's not money that we can reappropriate to put where we want to.
That is correct.
Okay, perhaps through
Point of information,
perhaps through negotiation with the commissioners, that money might be reused, but at this point, it is simply from the county digital learning fund.
Point of information, Madam Chair. I believe this is for $1,321,916.
Over a 4-year period.
Okay, so this is $339,000 for this year only? Okay.
That is correct, which would come out of the $750,000. All right, so we don't have the ability to play with that money.
That is correct.
Okay. My other concern, and having been in and out of quite a few kindergarten, first and second grade classrooms this year, having done a lot of volunteer work, I haven't seen the devices used in an overwhelming amount. I have seen children doing practice, I don't know if it's practice iReady or practice M-Class activities, one-on-one. I've seen teachers managing 18 or 19 children at once, and it goes quickly and smoothly because every child has a device in hand. I've also seen how long it takes for kindergartner or first grade or second grade students to return devices even to the charging cards. They're not taking them home, is my understanding. I've never seen, I have grandchildren in kindergarten and third grade, and none of them have brought a device home. So it's very limited usage within the classrooms, but used well and wisely when the whole class is using it. Now, I am really interested in what Mr. Hensley said about there's lots of talk about doing away with state testing on digital devices, because if that's the case...
That's not what I said.
Or your reference to testing and how it might change. I mean, I would support it.
No,
I'm
no.
all for taking it off devices, but is there concrete background there?
No, just to be clear is what I said, Madam Vice Chair. I said that end-of-grade testing and iReady could be done in a port in Starboard, where half the class does it while the other half is doing something else. What I did say is that there were discussions about more textbooks, less FaceTime and digital devices in the lower grades, which you said already is there, which begs the question, why do we need them other than transition time, lessening transition time?
But just to follow up, because I'm all for more books in hand. That doesn't change the testing requirements that the state has put upon us. And I thought you had referenced that. Am I misunderstanding there? Even if it does come, it won't come quickly. So these devices will be out of date long before I think the state could proceed to any kind of changes in testing. But I, for one, have seen how effective a classroom set of devices is, a one-on-one situation, and I would hope that we would continue to do so. Counties around us are scrambling to find devices, and we have been so fortunate that Mr. Eklund has kept ahead of the curve, even when we had to go virtual, and he was able to put a device in the hands of every student, repurposing devices from every little nook and cranny he could find, and we were very fortunate that that happened. So I would hate to see us take a step backwards by cutting back on the number of devices that are available.
Any other comments, questions? Ms. Caldwell.
I was just going to add, I agree with Libby on that. I think being in a first grade classroom firsthand, I know how it is to have 24 kids and you trying to teach 15 and 15 are on, or however more are on iReady, and the loudness in the room, it's very hard to do a testing on a computer and you teaching at the same time when you're testing. It's just, especially someone who has ADHD or a learning disability, it's very hard for them to focus on their tests while teaching is going on. So I think having that one-on-one will benefit that for every student being on the same page while they're testing. So I am all for with one-on-one.
Mr. Levy?
Yeah, but I have one bit of concern. I believe it was 2 months ago, we had a motion, and the motion was to do a 1-to-2 digital device in K through 1. Okay, and we were told that, and based on that, I voted and the board voted to authorize the refresh of the K1 digital devices. What we found out in the work session was all of a sudden there was more money, which was found, and that money allowed us to do a 1-to-1 digital device in K through 1. So what happened there was it kind of didn't matter what the board was saying, just it went ahead and did a 1-to-1 digital device in K through 1. Then, so that disturbed me a little bit, and then I listened very intently to what you said and said, if we don't get a 1-to-1 digital device in 2 through 5, we'll find money at the school level to do it. So essentially, doesn't matter what the board says, doesn't matter, and we represent the people of the county of Moore, okay? So it doesn't matter, we'll just get the money and we'll do it anyway. This disturbs me because there is, in my mind, an educational reason not to rely so much on digital devices. I believe, and I've seen some writings to back me up, is that one of the reasons why we're having such problems with reading comprehension and being able to pay attention to long reading passages is that we're relying so much on digital devices. And I had the occasion this past weekend to visit with, to go to a school expo. I think some of our other members of the administration were there. It was very, very interesting. And I made sure to ask each one of the large schools what they were doing with digital devices in the lower grades. And one of them, which was a large school, which was a very large and successful parochial school, said to me, and I don't want to name the particular school, there are several of them, but one said, well, we don't deal with that until the 6th grade. Okay? So I am very, very concerned that this idea of 1-to-1 digital devices, number one, that if, regardless of what we say, I'm very concerned where they won't pay attention to us anyway. And number two, I'm very, very concerned that it's defeating the purpose of needing to deal with our reading comprehension. And if I thought that the sole reason for having these devices was testing, and that's the reason why we need one-to-one digital devices, I would never agree to spending $1,300,000 on digital devices. We can find, by the way, this one particular school, I asked how they did their testing, and they were talking to me. They were telling me they still use Scantrons, which would be a nice, which is something that could always be done. But I do understand the state requires that we do it on digital devices. That's good. I just don't see the reason for one-to-one in all the grades, and I also see a reason to take a look at our strategic plan. But mostly, I'd like to know why, when we did a motion here to do a 2-to-1, and by the way, if you remember my words, I believed I was talking about carting the digital devices, so maybe that will ring a bell. Why that was the motion that was passed here, and then all of a sudden we see it's 1-to-1 in K through 1.
And I can, just, Mr. Levy, if I may.
If I could offer clarity, Madam Chair?
Yes, sir.
One thing first of all, the board is always open to, always has the opportunity to pass a policy that would dictate how we do things in our schools. And as superintendent administrators, we'd be bound to follow that. There's currently not a policy that dictates that. What I would say also for clarity on the fact that our school administrators in the past have scrambled, have worked with parent organizations, have done whatever they could to provide as many devices as they could in their classrooms prior to the pandemic, is because our school administrators and our classroom teachers saw great educational value in that. So that's part of what they're saying when they respond to the question, if we don't have a one-to-one, we're going to work hard to try to provide that in our classrooms. And to the other question about one-to-one with our K-1 classrooms, I know we received funding through the emergency connectivity funding for those K-1 devices. We can go back through and get clarity on the board minutes on the motions that were made and what was voted on by the board, and then bring that back to the board at a later time for clarity.
And I believe Mr. Eklund shared that we approved purchasing half the K-1 devices. And that's what that was, but it was through the ECF funding as well. So I would just like to take a moment to share, since we are here at Carthage Elementary today, Carthage is an example of a school who in the past, when we did not have one-to-one in K-5, thought that it would be important and could improve their instruction and their students' achievement. Back in Carthage Elementary did just what Dr. Locklear shared. You know, they worked before the district provided this to work with parent organizations, use some of their after-school care funds to purchase one-to-one devices for K-5. They did that back in 2013. Moving forward, 2014, Carthage was a C school, exceeded growth. 2015, Carthage was a C school, exceeded growth. 2016 was a C school, met growth. 2017 became a B school, exceeded growth. 2018, a B school, exceeded growth. 2019, a B school, and exceeded growth.
And we're going to credit the Chromebooks for
No,
that?
just saying
Causation doesn't
just an
mean,
example
whatever the saying
of
is.
a school that used it that has done well.
Any other comments
Yes, Madam Chair, I do.
relative to our motion that's on the floor? Board
Madam Chair, I do.
Mr. Hensley.
So first thing, let me once again compliment Mr. Eklund. I was a data systems officer in the Marine Corps. I've evaluated computer people from the Pentagon to forward operating bases and all around the world. And what Mr. Eklund does with his staff for the IT in Moore County schools is nothing short of remarkable, from the information management and the drives that we have and all that. So Please do not take this as a slight. Mr. Eklund and his team are remarkable. So some of this is in response to Libby's comments. First of all, the digital learning fee is an artificial division of money, and I think you're going to find, I've listened to what the sitting commissioners have said and what the soon-to-be sitting commissioners have said, and, you know, they are looking seriously at adopting this per-student funding program, you know, tied to inflation and all the good things we've talked about, but which will result in the first year, maybe $5 million funding increase, but I think they plan on absorbing or eliminating that digital funding because it's really artificial. I mean, look, if you come right down to it, my guess is 5 years ago or whenever it was implemented, it was just it was a way to get additional money from the county commissioners, and because it was earmarked for technology, but that's going to go away. So, you know, next year, you know, this money, we could probably spend it on anything, and certainly with a few conversations, we could spend it on anything. So this money is portable, and I don't think the digital funding fee is going to last much longer. Here's my thoughts. I hearken back to Panorama, and I hearken back to Panorama when this board voted 4-3 to purchase Panorama software. Only, well, we saw it here today from the Student Advisory Council when they said if we restart surveys, the reason why we might in the future restart surveys is because this board voted to spend $300,000 of your guys' money to purchase Panorama, only to discontinue administering surveys the next month. And we haven't administered surveys since then. So I would caution this board to be more cautious with the taxpayers' money. Just a side note about surveys, well, that's not germane. So my last point is if we adopt a 1-to-2 ratio today, that will give us, as I mentioned earlier, a port and starboard capability, which we can certainly get by with. We can always buy the second half once we finalize our strategic plan and have a permanent superintendent in place. What's the rush in spending $600,000 of the taxpayers' money when we don't even have a strategic plan? And I think there's some disagreement on the board on the level of technology that we need in second and third grade.
Any other comments?
Just that it's 330,000, not 600,000.
Okay.
Call the question.
So at this point,
Okay, I'm sorry. Well, the vice chair tried to make a comment and call the question without a vote on calling the question. So I just have a comment.
I made a comment just to correct an inaccuracy in your statement.
Right, that's what I was.
The estimated cost is $330,000. Then I asked to call the question.
so at this time,
hold on. Well, that's what.
Mr. Hensley, did you have another point?
Yes, I do.
Okay.
That's what I want to clarify, is it's $300,000 and some odd per year. If we buy over 4 years, which is $1.2 million or whatever, so if we bought half, the savings is $600,000. That's what I'm saying, or 2 teachers per year.
Thank you. So at this time, all in favor of the amended,
You got to vote to call the question.
vote to call the question.
Voting whether or not to stop.
Okay.
Well, you could, that could be withdrawn if we're ready to vote.
Yes, can we
I think
just?
there's unanimous consent to
Can
call.
are we ready to vote? Thank you. At this time, we will vote on the amended motion.
And just for point of clarification, the board is considering now Mr. Hensley's motion to
Yes.
amend the original motion, which, if it passes, the board would then have to vote on the motion as amended. So right now, the board is considering and taking a vote on Mr. Hensley's motion, if I understand it correctly, to approve the device refresh at a ratio of 1-to-2 instead of a ratio of 1-to-1.
Correct. That is the motion. All in favor of that motion, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Will you raise your hand just so I can see who that is? Okay. So we have 3. All opposed, raise your right hand. Okay. So that is 4-3 to fail that vote.
That's a shock, yeah.
Okay, so next we're voting on the recommendation of devices of 1-to-1 as presented. All in favor of that motion, raise your right hand so I can see who all is. Okay, and so we have, okay. I can't, so that is, and then all opposed, raise your hand. So we have that motion carried 6-1, okay? Are we on the same page? Yes. Okay, thank you. Next, we're going to the North Carolina Department of Transportation for purchase of our property at West End. Dr. Locklear.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Mr. Baraff presented information around North Carolina Department of Transportation's offer to purchase real property at West End Elementary School. There were questions and discussion that the board had, and Mr. Baraff has just received today, prior to our board meeting, responses from the Department of Transportation. I'd like for him to present those, share those with the board, and then for the board to have turn it over to the board for additional questions and discussion. And Mr. Baraff and I both will certainly take guidance from the board as how you want us to progress with this item. John?
Thank you, Dr. Locklear. Charlie, if you wouldn't mind, scroll down to the next page where the bullet points appear, and it'll make it easier. Thank you. As Dr. Locklear mentioned, right before the board gathered this evening, I did receive a response from NCDOT to these questions which were posed to them following the board work session. Just for information, since it's not written, if you permit me the patience, I'll read into here the response to each of the bullet points. So on the first one, the response is, based on the engineering measurements, the building is approximately 137 feet from the existing roadway, and the new roadway will be approximately 98 feet from the building. I will note here that I did have them open up the AutoCAD file and double check and show me, and they sent me screen images of it. And upon further review, I realized that the printout I had from DOT was not on the right scale paper. So my dimensions I provided last time were incorrect. I had the wrong scale for those documents, and I apologize for that.
What were those numbers again, please?
Those numbers are 137 feet existing and 98 feet proposed. DOT will not consider the proposed alignment unsafe. Setbacks are governed by local government ordinance. The next bullet point down, the response provided by NCDOT is that this would take time to research to provide an accurate answer. That is all they responded to that one at this time. The third bullet point down, the response is realigning the railroad would not be practical for a right-of-way taking that would not require a relocation of the property owner. I think they're referring to that the realignment of the railroad, if you looked at the overall map, impacted some structures on the south side of the road. But that I'm inferring that based off of their map. The next bullet point down is if the current offer is not acceptable to the Moore County Board of Education, they can entertain a reasonable counteroffer or work through a settlement during the mediation phase. The next bullet point down, the response is the current project schedule for utility clearing requires the condemnation paperwork to be processed June 1st, 2022. This will provide access to the site by September 1st, 2022. There will be some time available to negotiate up to a week or so prior to the actual filing. And then the last bullet point, the response is proposed posted speed limit will be 45 miles per hour. It is the intent of the department to have a school zone like existing for the proposed alignment. And those are the responses I received, again, just before the meeting. I will follow up with a written response to this for the superintendent to issue to the board. Dr. Locklear?
Thank you, John. And certainly, this is additional information that we didn't have last week, so we certainly wanted to share that with the board. And certainly, John and I both are available for questions or discussion from the board.
Board members, there have been several additional concerns and questions. So at this time, I would like to entertain your thoughts of and recommend that we table this and refer to administrative staff and legal counsel. We may want to include a board member or two board members in that discussion. Mr. Baraff, the date that you were given for the beginning of the condemnation, was that, did you say that was June the 1st?
That is correct.
Okay. So, board members, does the tabling this, is everybody on board with following that guideline and getting back to us?
So moved.
Okay. Second. Okay, so are there any questions, concerns at this point in time? I know you still have several questions with regard to some safety and different things around what's happening there at West End. So Dr. Locklear, we're asking you and John, and I would like to possibly include Mr. Hensley and Vice Chair in that discussion, please. And then if you will follow up, if we have to have a called meeting, we've got several meetings on our calendar, that we could have this item brought back to our board. In the meantime, board members, if you have additional questions or concerns, please reach out to David, Libby, or Dr. Locklear so that they can make sure that they're answering your questions.
If I can ask a clarifying question with regards to board member involvement, you're not appointing them to a committee, you're asking staff to consult with them as needed?
You're exactly right. No committee level, I'm just, yes, they're assistants. Thank you. Thank you, Jason. Any other questions with that? No, is that a motion?
That was a motion. I think there was a second.
So all in favor of that approach, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Are there any that oppose? Okay, so the motion carries 7-0.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, John. So at this time, we are down to Dr. Locklear.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I will make a few brief comments as part of my interim superintendent's report. I want to thank the board for having a moment of silence in recognition and honor of the tragedy in our school district, and I just appreciate the board and our community keeping Giovanni Racon's family and friends and Union Pines High School broader family in our thoughts and prayers. And I wanted to personally thank Principal Annie McCormick and our school staff and our district crisis team who showed up, was on campus today, will continue to be on campus as needed, supporting our students and staff. And so certainly appreciate the board's support in that and thoughts in that in our community and school staff, and appreciate what they're doing. But we continue to keep that family in our thoughts and prayers. I also wanted to briefly share how proud I am, how proud we all are of our students and staff. We've had so many opportunities over the last month and going forward in May to celebrate our staff and to celebrate our students and cheer them on. As we know, we held our first in-person Teacher of the Year, Principal of the Year banquet on April 28th, where we celebrated all of our Teachers of the Year at all of our schools. And what a wonderful night, what a wonderful celebration with our family. We announced our Teacher of the Year from Southern Pines Elementary, Melanie Henderson, and our Principal of the Year from West Pine Middle School, Jenny Wiley, who will be representing the school district next school year. So congratulations to both of them. Friday, we celebrated National School Lunch Hero Day, where we celebrate our child nutrition staff. And as an old country boy, I like to say, if you're hungry, you ain't going to learn. So we're very, very proud of them, very fortunate to have our child nutrition staff and appreciate them. All kind of other events that are going on from spring athletics, playoffs, and conference championship to our musicals that we celebrated with our students at our high schools over the last 3 weeks. And certainly moving forward, there's going to be a lot of events that our staff's working together on, and just focuses in on the classroom as we all work together to finish strong as we celebrate the class of 2022 in June. Also wanted to note very briefly that Mr. Cox and myself will be attending the Board of Commissioners budget work session this Wednesday, the 11th, at the Senior Center. We'll be available to clarify a few questions that the commissioners have asked as we've worked with them and County Manager Vest. And so Andrew and I will be there to follow up on a few of those questions and be available to answer any additional questions that they may have. And again, just want to thank the board for the opportunity to serve. And again, stress how proud and appreciative we are of our kids and our staff, and we look forward to the next month as we work towards finishing strong. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Dr. Locklear. At this time, we will hear from our board members. Ms. Caldwell.
Yeah, I just had a few things I just wanted to say to everybody out there. If you can, write a note or say something to your teacher as you're walking by in classroom for teacher appreciation. They do a lot to help you succeed, and you'd be surprised, a little handshake, high five, it means the world to them. And I also wanted to say that my daughter and I went to go see Seussical the Musical at Union Pines, and it was one of the best ones I've ever seen. I'm telling you, I think these kids, I mean, you could put them in Broadway and you wouldn't know the difference. They were just amazing, and I just wanted to say what a great job. You can tell the hard work and dedication, even from the paintings and everything that went into that musical was just outstanding. So just wanted to give that out a shout out. I wish I got to go to the Northmore one. I think one of you all did go to that, but my daughter's been sick, so I didn't get to go to that one. But it's just been amazing to see just the talent that we have in our schools.
Mr. Holmes.
I don't have anything.
Thank you. Mr. Hensley.
I've jotted a few things down during the meeting.
Okay.
I've got three things. First is I want to correct a few things that have been said in public and were said this evening that are outright not accurate. No one on this board is waging a war on anyone. That is an accusation made up by the left in an attempt to mislead the public. Simply put, it is a lie. Do we question? Do we set boundaries on behavior? Do we discipline staff when they need to be? Of course. That is what we are supposed to do. But it is a lie that anyone on this board is waging a war on any member of Moore County Schools. Likewise, the myth of a mass exodus of faculty and staff is a lie. Once again, it's made up by the left in an attempt to mislead the public and generate anger over something that they made up. Why can I say that? Because I'm on the school board and I have the facts. Just 2 weeks ago, when I was in the advisory group meeting, our HR department threw up a slide that showed teacher turnover over the last 5 years, maybe 4 years, 4 or 5 years. And I took note because I'd heard this lie repeated over and over and over again. And in Moore County, teacher turnover over the last 4 or 5 years is, each year, it's within 1%, 1 or 2% of the previous year. It just vacillates 1 or 2%. In fact, turnover this year is lower than it was 4 years ago. And as a business owner who talks to many other business owners, I suspect that we are in much better shape than many businesses in our community. Much of that is due to this board has been able to give much needed raises to our classified staff and this and that and the other thing. But it is 100% not accurate and a lie if anyone tells you that there's a mass exodus of faculty and staff. Finally, I jotted this down just a few minutes ago, this board likes to spend. technology, today, we spent 6 teachers a year worth of technology. If we got half the technology, we spent 3 teachers per year. On Panorama, which we stopped using a month after, over my objection, we purchased Panorama. We could have hired 1 teacher a year for 4 years for software that we're not even using. The public, parents, and faculty want lower class sizes. I want lower class sizes. When are we as a board going to get serious about spending our money to hire teachers to reduce our class sizes? That's it.
Thank you. Mr. Dennison, Mr. Levy?
Yeah, a couple of things. Just a couple of things. Number one, a shout out to Southern Pines Elementary. They've just made my granddaughter so welcome there. Last week was Teacher Appreciation Week and Teacher Appreciation Day, and they were I can't say enough about the school and the like, as well as all our schools. And I wanted to also do a special shout out to Carthage Elementary here for not only for hosting us, but I want to say that it is just, I understand that it needs a little sprucing up, and I understand that we're going to hopefully be putting some good bucks into the elementary school in Carthage, whether it's here or somewhere else. But it is a wonderful place, and I appreciate their hospitality, as I know the members of the board do. And I also want to call attention to the brand new park, which sits outside of Carthage Elementary. The board is not going to take credit for it because it came from private funding. But it shows what a great community we have here in Carthage to give us such a wonderful park for our students. And I know that whether this school is here or not, that park will be there for the children of Carthage. And that is just a wonderful thing. Next, I wanted to say that, to send out my condolences for our student who got involved in the car accident and died. Special thing for me is that I remember calling out his name at roll while I taught at Union Pines High School. And so that's especially sad for me. But then I have to ask myself, well, what can we do to deal with such things? And I don't know whose fault this was or anything about it. It doesn't matter whose fault the accident was or anything like that. But it has to remind us that we need to call driver's ed a core piece of our curriculum. And that we spend a lot of money on technology, and we spend a lot of money on this, that, and the other thing. But driver's ed simulators are something that we're going to need and we should be buying. The reason is that as I drive along the streets of Moore County and along the highways and the like, I'm not likely to worry about whether the driver beside me can do a quadratic equation. But I am likely to wonder whether that student was given the best possible driver's education. And that includes being able to have some experience driving on snow or ice, which we get rarely here, but there are lots of accidents. What happens when a deer crosses your path? What do? Do you turn on your lights, off your lights? Do you brake? Do you honk your horn? What is it that you do? Driving simulators can add to our students' knowledge and can prevent useless accidents. One of the biggest problems that we have in driving, especially for our young drivers, is something called overcorrection. And that is you come to an emergency and you overcorrect, and all of a sudden there's a rollover and the like. We need to think about it. we need to also think once again about seat belts on buses. There should not be another bus which is bought by Moore County Schools that does not have proper restraints. None of us would put our children or our grandchildren in a moving object without restraining them properly. And just a couple of days ago, there was an accident in near Albuquerque, New Mexico, of a rollover of a bus, and none of the children were sitting in position. All of them were tossed about the bus. Those injuries could have been prevented, not to mention the fact that discipline on our buses, if children are in seat belts, will be 110% better, which means that our drivers are less distracted. So with that, those are some of the things that we should be thinking about. And once again, thank you to Carthage Elementary for hosting us today.
Thank you, Mr. Levy. Ms. Vice Chair Libby.
I think Mr. Levy used most of my time. Just on two positive notes, I did see Newsies up at Northmore. It is absolutely amazing that so many young men can both sing and dance. It was incredible to see these high school boys up there tap dancing and so in rhythm. I don't know where they found them all because it's not a big high school, but it was the most incredible program. So I appreciated the opportunity to be there. On another note, it was my good fortune to visit the third grade classrooms at Farm Life School on Friday and spend an hour with them talking about local government. And I just wanted to reassure our public that we start early in talking about the Constitution. I was a follow-up to their studies about the federal government and the state government, and they had been discussing their municipalities, and they knew who their mayors were and how their local governments worked. So it gave me an opportunity to come in and explain the relationship of the Board of Education along with our county commissioners, and then our relationship with each individual municipality. So it was a marvelous experience from my standpoint. The third grade classrooms were about 17 or 18 students each, well behaved and absolutely engaged with what their teacher was sharing with them. So I appreciated that opportunity. That's all.
Thank you. Board members, you guys always take my comments since I'm the last to go, so I won't repeat what you've already said, but I have to say kudos to all of our high schools for their musicals this year. That started out at Pinecrest and then Union Pines and then at Northmore, and all of them were just phenomenal. And so I tried to make my way to thank the theater teacher as well as the band leader, because the music was amazing as well for each one of those musicals. We have a lot of things going on for the month of May, April, and already in the month of May. Every time I look, one of our schools, they're winning in some sports or in something. Our students are just amazing. And this time of year, they are just all out and involved. The other thing that I want to mention, board members, is the rest of May is going to be a busy month for you. So make sure you're keeping up with your calendars. We've got CTE signing coming up. We've got retirement banquet coming up, FFA banquets. Lots of things are on our calendars. We've got a couple of meetings this month, so please don't lose sight of our dates and our times that we are supposed to show up at different events. Again, our principal at Carthage, wave your hand there in the back. Thank you so much for your graciousness and your hospitality. Could not let this evening go without mentioning you, and we just so appreciate your hospitality and allowing us to be here this evening.
And at this time, I will entertain Mr. Dennison's
Madam
motion.
Chair, I move the meeting be adjourned.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Meeting is adjourned.